So, good evening, all. Is the voice audible to all? Fine.
Yes, sir.
So, we'll quickly recap what we did last weekend before we starting off with the protocols for the mobile ad hoc networks, which are there in our syllabus. So, as we discussed earlier, also, mobile ad hoc network is a continuously evolving network, which is self-configurable in nature. It is also called an infrastructure-less network because mobile devices are connected on the wires. When we use the word infrastructure, it primarily means the absence of the access point in the network. Because when we compare the MANETs with the wireless LAN, the only point of difference comes in the availability or the presence of the access point. The wireless LAN has the access point, whereas mobile ad hoc network does not have the access point as such. And they're also popularly called as on-the-fly network or the spontaneous network because they are just created on the fly as and when it is required, created, and they can be dissolved also as and when required. They're not a permanent network; it's a very dynamic network, purely created to meet a temporary requirement in the office or in the conference or maybe in any of the entertainment purposes or maybe official purposes or maybe for any of the reasons. Where the requirement is to create a network only for a small duration, let's say maybe for 24 to 36 hours. So we don't require a long line cabling, we don't require a backbone cables, we just require the machines which can directly talk to one another without the access point. And we see the credit for discovering this network go to the Charles Perkins and Chai Kyung Tang from the Cambridge University because they were the first persons who were able to think about this network and they were able to practically achieve it in the real time scenario. This is a typical example of how the mobile ad hoc network look like. We'll have multiple nodes all in the overlapping transmission range of each other. Now that is the first foremost requirement for these mobile ad hoc network to be there. All the nodes should be in the overlapping transmission range. If they're not in the overlapping transmission range, then they cannot communicate with each other. So when we write in the exam of our own understanding also, it should always be kept in mind that whenever we talk of the mobile ad hoc network, we talk of the network where all the nodes are in the overlapping transmission range and the end-to-end path is always possible from the source to the destination with the help of the overlapping transmission range. Because this transmission range helps in having multiple intermediate nodes which assist in the message passing as such. So we use a concept called route recovery, route request, route reply, and route recovery as such, in case the link gets broken down. So whenever the two nodes wish to communicate with each other, they do so with the help of sharing the route request and the route reply messages. So if the node A wants to talk to the node D, then node A generates a route request messages and the route request messages are broadcasted over the air. The message goes from A to B, then it goes from B to C, and then it goes from C to D. Now, D receives the message and D is the final intended destination, and D replies back to the A. So, how it will reply back? D will send the route reply messages, RREP messages. There will be certain situations where directly the node B or C can also send the route reply message on behalf of the node D, but it depends upon the routing protocol which we use. Considering a plain scenario, we'll always assume the destination node is sending the route reply message. So D sends a route reply message to the C sends a route reply message to the B, and the B sends a route reply message to the A. In this way, a path, a logical path, a temporary path, not a physical path, gets established between the source and destination, and the message exchange can take place. So both the route request and the route reply messages are the control packets. They are not the data packets. So initially we'll establish a path all with the help of these control packets. Now this is the second solution to a problem. The node itself moves. So either A moves closer to the D or D moves closer to the A, and then the message exchange can directly take place without the help of these intermediate nodes. But this is a remote situation where the nodes themselves will start moving around as such. There could be hardly 1 in 100 situation where the nodes always moves, come closer to the destination node and deliver the message as such. Otherwise, the 99% chance is always the help of the intermediate node which is taken and the message get delivered from the source to the destination. Kindly mute your mic. There is an audio problem. Now, let's look another network which is a most popular network called as the SHIP network. Sparse, hybrid, intermittent, and the partition networks. Now, sparse, for the name itself, is more like a sparse graph in the graph theory. Means the nodes are spread across a large area, typically like a Rajasthan desert or maybe an ocean seabed. It's a huge area. Nodes are spread across a huge area as such. So node density is very less, but the coverage area is very wide. That is what we call as a sparse as such. Hybrid means it's a collection or a combination of multiple number of network. Like a hybrid network can have a wireless LAN in one cluster. It can have a mobile ad hoc network in another cluster. It can have the Bluetooth technology based network in another cluster. It can have the FDDI based network, fiber distributed data interface network in another cluster. It can have an Ethernet in another cluster. So multiple number of networks all working in their own finite domains working, and then they're coordinating and collaborating each other for the exchange of the data packets as such. Now, intermittent, why intermittent? Because here we believe the networks will have intermittent connectivity. There are two kinds of connectivity. One we normally use in our own browsers like Mozilla Firefox and Netscape Navigator, live connectivity. A 24/7, almost our routers are switched on at the home, at the offices, and live data is streaming in from the servers to the client as such. So that's all the live connectivity. But here we are talking of the intermittent connectivity where connectivity will be there at times and it will not be there at times as such. So it will be there for few seconds, it may not be there for few minutes. But maybe there for few minutes, it may not be there for few seconds as well. So no live 24/7 connectivity exists. Why this could be such a situation? Because we can see there are certain paths which are broken. The clusters are standalone clusters. So in this kind of situation, the connectivity will be missing between these clusters. And P is a partition. Partition simple means we are talking about the clusters or the domains which are independent in itself because they are, for example, if the always routed taken between A and B and A and B are not dependent on D and E, then it doesn't matter to them because this is up and a complete cluster. But if the communication need to happen across the partition or across the cluster, then yes, we require a proper coordination between all these networks as such. So here the partition network will have, let's say, a machine C wishes to communicate with the machine F. It will not be able to do for the simple reason that there is a breakup of path between B and D. So B will always take the help of the A, and with the help of A, it will deliver to be able to deliver the message to the D. So simple way how the communication can be done with the help of the machine number A or the workstation A. So with the help of it, now the packets can travel easily from C to B to A to D to E and then finally to the F. That's way how the connectivity or cooperation of the intermediate nodes play a very important role in the transmission of the data packets. Now, routing the manets are probably classified into two following categories. One is called deterministic, another is called the reactive. So, in the proactive one, the entire path from the source to destination is well known in advance before the routing starts. It's good in those situations where I'm well aware about the topology of the network. How many number of nodes are there in the network? What is a transmission range? What is a dimension size of the network? Where exactly it is? Are there any adversaries or are there likely attacks in the network? So I'm familiar with everything about the network. So that then I can always go for the proactive path. But in the reactive path, I'm not familiar with the topology of the network. So all the network is established on fly basis. All the nodes directly come and log into the network and they start communicating with each other. So the path is not known from the source to the destination known in advance as such. So we also call proactive as a deterministic in nature. and we also call them as a fly-based or dynamic networks when we use the reactive protocols. And the real time we always see the reactive protocols always come into picture as compared to the proactive protocols. Whereas routing becomes very easy when we use the proactive protocols. And the examples, typical examples for them are DSDV and AODV. So destination sequenced distance vector routing protocol in the proactive protocol category, and AODV for ad hoc on-demand distance vector routing protocol, which is one of the world's most popular protocol used in the reactive category. So we'll discuss the DSDV protocol first, how the routing can successfully take place with the help of the DSDV protocol. So I'm switching over the slides. So I'll stop sharing and then I will restart the sharing. So how so it is visible to what DSDV protocol. Fine. So we'll talk about the DSDV, destination sequence distance vector routing protocol. Now this is a protocol which is based on the Bellman-Ford algorithm. So Bellman-Ford is one of the world's most popular algorithm when we talk of this routing, or the proactive routing between the source to the destination. Now here the packets are transmitted according to the routing table. So that means we are first going to establish a routing table, and we'll use the rows or the records of the routing table to transmit a path from the source to the destination. Now each and every node maintains the routing table with the entry for each node in the network. So what will that, but if the table is there, what will the heading of the columns of the table? We have a destination address, a destination sequence number, a next hop, a hop count, and the installation time, the startup time for that particular network as such. Now, one of the most important thing in this entire DSDP protocol, and furthermore, when we talk of the AODV and the DSR protocol, we have a concept called the sequence number. Now, here each and every node maintains a topic or a sequence called item called as a sequence number, and it updates at each change in the neighborhood information. So whenever a new node gets established or a node moves away, a sequence number corresponding to that node will get incremented as such. And it is used for the freedom from the loops. It also helps us to distinguish the old route or the stale route from the new ones. That we'll see how does it do in the real time scenario. We'll take an example to understand our sequence number concept. Now, routing update, let's say in the case of the DSDV, each node periodically transmit updates to keep the table consistency. So what will each every node do? It will keep on transmitting the information about the routing table. So what will that include? It includes own sequence number, route table updates, which will include the destination address, the destination sequence number corresponding to the destination we are targeting, and the hop count. And nodes also send the routing table update for important link changes. So whenever the link breaks down, then also the node will send the information to the neighboring node regarding the non-existent route. So when two routes to a destination receive from the two different neighbors, now that's a big problem, because if the same node receives the two route information from two neighbors regarding the same destination, now which one to select? So choose the one with the greatest destination sequence number. So if there is a node B, it receives the information that it can reach to the node H via the F also and via L also. So it will see which one it has to finally choose. So it will choose the one which is the greatest destination sequence number, and if both of them are equal, it will choose one with the smallest hop count. Hop count here actually means how many number of nodes away the source is located from the destination. For example, Delhi is, if you compare the distance of Delhi with Lucknow and Delhi with Chandigarh, let's say Delhi with Lucknow it is 200 kilometers and Delhi with Chandigarh 250 kilometers. So this 250 kilometer considers a hop count. So we say Delhi to Lucknow is 200 hop count away, and Delhi to Chandigarh 250 hop count away. That is just an indication of how many number of nodes I need to traverse before I reach from the source to the destination. Now, there are two kinds of the updates which the node can use using a DHDV protocol. So first is a incremental, another is the full dump. So we say routing table updates its lot of control traffic. So data will transmit later on. Initially, we need to identify the path, and we need to select a path which we use for the transmission of the control packet. To identify a path, we have to get the help of the control packets. So DSDV addresses this problem by using two types of routing update packets. First is full dumps, wherein it will carry all the routing table information to several NPD. NPD is a network protocol data units, and it transmitted relatively infrequently. So it's no finite time is there, no periodic time is there. It can be transmitted at any point of time as such. An incremental update will be transmitted from one node to another node, and will carry the information chain since the last full dump fits within one network protocol data unit NPDU, and where updates can no longer fit in one NPDU, it sends again the full dump. Now, NPDU is the amount of the information which one node can send to another node at one point of time. So we'll see an example how what is the total size of the NPDU is, and what all information it can send at one point of time from one node to another. Now let's take an example. This example should make many things clear. Now this is a link addition, means a new node is about to enter into the network. Now this example shows that A is already connected to B, but initially we just assume that we'll have a node C, B, D and E, and A is joining the network. So routing table shown here does not carry the information about A. It is before the joining of the node A in the network. So assuming A is not present, so what will the routing table of B look like? It will have four columns. First is the destination address, then the destination sequence number, then the next hop node and the hop count. Now let's try to understand each one of them one by one slowly. We'll take first B. Now B, for its own, it has got the destination sequence number 132. So now if B wants to reach to B, so it writes the information next of its own identity, that is B. And the hop count is 0 because we're talking about the B itself as such. Now this table is shown from the B's point of view. So it's B's routing table. Same way, every node will have its own routing table. Now let's look at the second record. Now C. Now B has a value of destination sequence number 144 for the node C. So next hop is C, and is one hop away from the B. Now let's come to the third record, the D. Now B has the destination sequence number value as 202 for the B, from the B to the B. Now the next hop node is B, and how many hop count away? One hop count, because B is directly connected to the B. Now let's look at the last record, E. Now B has a value of destination sequence number as 155 for the node E. For reaching to the E from the B will use the next hop as B, and it is 2 hop count away from B. That's how the typical routing table looks like. Now this is already there in place. Now A joins the network. So this table is before the joining of A into the network. Now let's see how the routing table will change and how what information will have. So now the first step that takes place, node A joins the network. So this shows something like this: node A joins the network, and moment it joins, the node A transmits the routing table update. So it sends a value of own, that is A, then it sends 101, that is the destination sequence number, and then it sends the information 0, that is number of hop count it is away from the B. Now, but it is considering its own self, so it sends the value as 0. Now, how will the routing table of the B change? So if you look, now the entry of A comes as a last record. So now we'll have the 101, the sequence number received from the A, it is stored here, and now B store the information on next hop as A, and now A is one hop away from the B. So last record gets stored and get created within that routing table, the B's routing table. So look at the first, second, third step. Node A joins the network, node A transmits the routing table updates, and node B receives the transmission, inserts a record A101 and the hop count, the how many hop count away it is from the A. So routing table of the B gets updated with respect to the A. Now one more thing what B has to do is to send this information to all other nodes in the network. So we say fourth step, node B propagates a new route information to all the neighbors. So what is that information? A, kindly mute your mics. Whose mic is on? Just check and mute the mic. Now node B propagates a new route information to the neighbors. It says A, a node identity, the destination sequence number 101, and how many hop count away it is from the B. So 1. Now the neighbors update their routing table. For example, node C and D, what it shows the information A 101, B 2, and continue to propagate the information. Because if you look from the C and D's point of view, they can reach to the machine A with a destination sequence number 101 through the B. And how many hop count away via the path of the B? It is 2. 1 and the 2. Because A is equidistant from the C and D via the path of the B. So all this information need to be propagated to all the new node, all the old nodes of the network. The arrival of the node A within the network. So if you look here, the information will now be updated in all these routing tables, and accordingly they will do it. Now let's consider another situation. What we'll talk of the link breaks. Let's say the link breaks down between the B and D. Now, moment the link breaks down between the B and D, the both E also become unreachable from the B. That is one of the biggest problems will happen because the path has got broken down between the B and D, so E also becomes unreachable. Now, in this situation, how will the information about the routing table change? Let us see. Now, we consider the same routing table as shown in this slide, and how will the information change? The first point, if you see, link between the B and D breaks. So the line which was connecting the two nodes has moved away, has vanished. Now the node B notices this break, that the path has got broken down between the B and D. This presumably happens if there is no connectivity or no data transmission is taking place between the B and D, and they believe that path has got broken down. Or other possible situation could be that D has moved away, because we are talking of mobile ad hoc network where mobility is induced. So nodes are free to move around within the network. When we say nodes are free to move around, we are talking of the carriers of this mobile node. For example, I am using a smartphone, and if my smartphone is one of the node in this mobile ad hoc network, so as long as I'm sitting in one place, I become a stationary node. When I start moving around, I am the carrier of that mobile node. So that mobile node is dependent on me. So moment I move around, the node will also move around as such. Because node themselves will not move. It's a social carrier. It's a carrier of those nodes which moves around within the network, and accordingly mobility will come. Then we say link between B and D breaks, and the node B notices the break that D is not reachable. It updates the hop count for D and E to infinity. Infinity means the node is not reachable at this point of time. Now, if you look at the record here, the red colored, the previous destination sequence number, if you see, was 202, and for the E was 155. Now the new destination sequence number is incremented by 1. So now it becomes 203 and 156. Now we are talking only from the B's point of view in this entire example. It's a B's routing table. Now the next hop node is D and D, and both become unreachable. So hop count becomes infinite. That means from the D we cannot reach to D and E. That's how the node break is usually handled in the case of the mobile ad hoc networks. Now let's look further.
Rahul sir, one doubt here. Why we have incremented the sequence number by 1?
That means from the node's point of view, yes, it has noticed the change, and once it has noted this change, it will be reflected. Because if you don't do it, if you look from 202, for the 202, the hop count is 1. Now, and 155, the hop count is 2. If we do not change it, the sequence number, and we directly make it infinite, we'll have a corruption on the routing table. So to make a change in the hop count, we need to update the sequence number also. So 202 is linked to 1, 155 is linked to 2. So if there is any change I need to make it in the hop count, because now it is unreachable, I need to increment the corresponding sequence number for that particular node. So this is a mandatory.
Sir, we can add or subtract anything just to change the number, like from 202.
Increment.
You always have to increment.
DSGV increments it, because every routing
and only by 1 or any ballpoint number.
When we write the code in NS2 simulator or in Optet, we can increment by plus 2 also, plus 4 also, plus 6 also.
Okay.
But that is
just to showcase. Right. Okay.
We need to show the change.
Change, correct. Okay.
We need to show that something has happened in the network, and we do not decrement the value, because there could be other previous old values which might get overlap with it. But we always increment the value as such. And when we talk of the simulator, there are many simulators in the network, like NS2 Network Simulator version 2, Network Simulator version 3, or we have the like OpNet is there, which is also free of cost open source. These are the simulators which you can download from the net if our interest is there, and then we can use them for simulating this kind of the protocol like AODV or DSR or DSDB, because those are the protocol which provides these are the simulators which provides the flexibility and the features where we can simulate these kind of the protocols. We don't have a lab attached to this our subject, otherwise if a lab would have been there, we would have done some of the routing, how that actually happens in the real-time scenario as such. So moving on, after the changes of infinity has been done, now the B needs to send this information to the other nodes in the network. So if you look at the first point, we have already discussed link between node and B breaks, B and D breaks. Node B notices the break, updates the hop count for D and E to infinity, and increment the sequence number both for D and E, because they become now unreachable. Now another important thing, node B sends the update with the new route information, because now it's a duty and the responsibility of the node B to inform A and C also about the link data set. Otherwise they will keep on assuming that there is always a path from the B to the D, which in reality is not there as such. So how will you check the information? If you look at here, D 203 and the infinity. So whatever was there in the third record, D 203 and the infinity. So information is sent. Same way B will send the information about the E to the A and C, with E destination sequence number 156 and the hop count is infinity. That means node is not reachable at this point of time because the path has got broken down. So that's how the information get propagated within the network. So whichever node will see, okay, the hop count is infinity, that means that particular node is now unreachable. Now this unreachability is not going to be a long phenomenon spending few hours. It could be just few minutes also, or it could be just few seconds also. So this kind of information keeps on propagating within the network because mobility is highly induced, so nodes keep on moving around. So information about the latest path keeps on propagating and getting broadcasted within the network as such. So it's a dynamic thing that happens. But in the case of the DSDV or what we have protocol which we are discussing here, destination sequence distance vector routing protocol. This is a protocol that is table driven, which will use this table for deciding on the path and deciding on the node which need to be taken for sending the control packets. Now, whatever table is being shared here is only used for control packet transmission. Once the path get established, then that path will be used for the transmission of the data packets or data messages. So this is a protocol that works on the Bellman-Ford routing algorithm. Now, one of the common questions that should come into my mind is when we already discussed the routing protocol in the wired network, why don't we use the routing protocol of the wired network in the wireless network? For example, if you look in the wired network, we have got the routing protocols based on the autonomous system. So we'll use the routing within the autonomous system as well as routing across the autonomous system. So we use the RIP and OSPF, routing information protocol, and open shortest path first protocol when we talk of within the autonomous system. And we talk of the BGP or the border gateway protocol when we talk communication across the autonomous system. Now here we do not use it. Here we in the managed we prefer we don't use none of the protocol like RLP or OSP, EF or BGP. It has got a wireless network or the mobile network have got their own routing protocols. Like one of them we have discussed DSDV, another will have the AODV, we'll have the DSR. But the primary reason is that when we talk of wired network, there all the nodes are stationary in nature. So they don't talk of the mobility. When we talk of the wireless LAN or the mobile ad hoc network, here mobility is the primary factor. So here protocols are designed to take into account that what happens if the node moves around. For example, in this just DSDV only when we discuss this phenomenon of infinity. This thing is not there in the case of the wired network because in wired network none of the nodes ever move around. They still remain there as such. So we never use the concept of infinity in the hop count mechanism. If you remember when we talk of the wired network, we got the RIP routing information protocol. So there we use the maximum hop count as 16, not beyond that. So maximum number of hop count possible is 16. So if the packet moves within the network from source to destination, maximum hop count it can traverse is 16 possible as such, not beyond that. Same way we used to have the OSPF, the Open Shortest Path First protocol, where we use a de Castro algorithm for finding the shortest path from the source to the destination. Now, de Castro algorithm can work successfully fine only if the nodes in the network are stationary, because then only you can calculate the shortest path. But in the case of wireless LAN and mobile ad hoc network, since the nodes are moving around, mobility is induced, so we cannot calculate the shortest path because if the node sends a request, I need to calculate the shortest path to the destination. By the time reply comes, the node itself is moved off or node has drained off. The energy level is another problem in the case of the mobile ad hoc network. So de Castro algorithm fails when we talk of the mobile ad hoc network for the simple reason that de Castro algorithm does not take into account the concept of the mobility. And we do not have any updates on that algorithm ever since the wireless LAN or the mobile ad hoc network came into. Otherwise, we would have two variants for the de Castro algorithm, one for the wired network and one for the mobile ad hoc network. But that is not the case. De Castro algorithm only used for the stationary network where entire infrastructure is fixed, the nodes are stationary, the connectivity is fixed, connectivity doesn't get broken down, the nodes doesn't move off. That is the simple reason why the routing protocols of the wired network are never used in the wireless network. So for the and this is a growing research area. Many protocols have actually come into the picture, but we do not have the best optimized routing protocol still for the mobile ad hoc network. So those of us who plan to go for the PhD after the completion of MTech and if their interest get developed in the wireless network, so this is one of the good areas where the routing can be taken as one of the research topic. Maybe in your MTech also, if you are by the time you move on to the final year, you will have your entire dissertation to be done. So the routing protocols can be taken as one of the case studies and the entire thesis can be successfully done. Where you take the previous protocols, do the theoretical study of them, and then propose a new kind of routing scheme which is ideally suitable for the mobile ad hoc networks as such. So that is all about the DSDP protocol. So I will stop sharing and then I will share the
Around,
slide
sir,
for your data.
one
Say,
around sir,
Hello,
one
sir.
doubt here.
say.
Sir, here, if let's suppose we have removed the link from B to D, right, and again going forward, we have the same connection. We have the requirement to make a link from B to D. So in this case, do we update the values that were already present in the system from non-infinite number to a infinite number and changing the sequence number, or we add the new entry?
Increment. Whenever any
So
change will happen within the network, the
Mhm.
destination sequence number will get incremented, and then the infinity will be removed, and again hop count will be calculated, and then hop count value will be stored. Say.
Okay, and in case of removal, like if we keep on removing the links, but we have to maintain the entry in the routing information, this routing table. So wouldn't it increases the records in the table? Like for example, if we have removed the B and D, correct, B from D. So now D and E does not, like, they have the hop count as infinity, but we are still maintaining in the routing table. So if a node gets deleted, we are still maintaining its entry. So it will unfortunately keeps on increasing. So shouldn't we remove the records altogether?
No, removal is not the right way because the amount of time it will take to again create a new record, it will be too much. So it will keep the previous record and it will keep the hop count as infinity because in the mobile ad hoc network, mobility is very small. It could be in the few seconds or maybe hardly in a few minutes. So again, we'll keep deleting the record and adding a record, then deleting a record, and then adding a record. It will be a huge havoc on the node because you must remember this: these nodes are not continuously power driven; they are all running on their batteries. So they will just update one particular value, move a hop count, just change in a small hop count value from let's say number 4 to infinity. Then again, if the node comes, now it will changes from infinity to number 5. So small change will be done. The entire record will not be purged. Entire record will not be deleted because creating again a fresh record will take more battery life than doing a small change in the particular column of the table. That's why it's always advisable to change the value rather than deleting it. Any other doubt?
Okay.
Hello, sir. There is one question.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Hello. Yeah. So
Say,
this
say.
sequence number. Yeah. So for the sequence, because it by 1 or 2 or 4. So what are the possibilities that they will become? I mean, they will be duplicated for some other node.
Very remote possibility.
Okay. So what if that happens?
Because if you look at the DSDB is used when the entire network topology is known well in advance. So I know what are the total number of nodes in the network, let's say 5, 11, 15, 19, 25, 30. So I know the network size, I know the number of nodes participating in the network. So accordingly, I can decide on the destination sequence number. Yes, in the AODB, where network is established on fly basis, on ad hoc basis, where I'm not familiar with the network topology, this could be a problem. But in the case of DSDB, everything is known to me in advance. So I will decide on the destination sequence number accordingly. So there will rarely, maybe a 1% chance that the overlapping can happen as such. Otherwise, there will not be any problem. No, I don't think so. Any other question?
Excuse me, sir. अगर ये सीक्वेंस नंबर हमारा ऑलरेडी जैसे हमारा नोट डिस्कनेक्ट हो गया है, वो ऑलरेडी सीक्वेंस नंबर किसी और को नहीं असाइन हो सकता सेम सीक्वेंस नंबर
अगर
if another node join the same
अभी
network.
टेबल में देखो आप सीक्वेंस नंबर काफी अलग अलग रखे गए हैं जिससे कहीं भी ओवरलैपिंग की सिचुएशन ना हो. अच्छा, एक सीक्वेंस नंबर
हाँ
किसी
जी.
सीक्वेंस नंबर के कॉरेस्पॉन्डिंग है, वो सीक्वेंस नंबर किसी और नोड के लिए हम यूज नहीं करते. तो जब इंक्रीमेंट होगा
Okay.
तो उसी प्रोपोर्शन में बढ़ता जाएगा, कभी भी रुकेगा
Okay,
नहीं वो तरीके से. यहाँ भी आप देखो 100
Okay.
है, 156 है, 203, 144 है, 132 है, तो काफी डिस्पैरिटी रखी गई है सीक्वेंस नंबर के अंदर. Or another thing
Okay,
which you would have seen in node A, when it joined the network, it itself introduced its own sequence number. So if you look at this slide, when the node A joins the network, it came up with its own record that this is a destination sequence
Already.
number for me. Yes. So वो यही से शुरू होगा. तो B को अपना कोई नया
Okay.
चूज नहीं करना. जो A ने बताया है कि ये A ने ये
Okay.
चूज नंबर किया है B के लिए, तो B बस उसी को यूज करना शुरू कर देगा. So remotest
Ma'am,
from the remotest
sir, I am
possibility.
saying that if B is disconnected from the network,
Which node, B or D?
202 D, D.
D, okay.
20T, two sequence number assigned to D. But
हाँ,
when it is disconnected,
ठीक है.
this 202 sequence number is blank now.
नहीं, पर blank, पहली बात तो अगर आप यहाँ देखो, हमने सिर्फ कोई नंबर, जैसे यहाँ 203 आ गया, हमने सिर्फ जो भी लास्ट नंबर था उसमें इंक्रीमेंट करा और हॉप
Okay.
काउंट को इनफाइनाइट के लिए कर दिया, बस दैट्स इट. और हमने कुछ ज़्यादा चेंज नहीं करा उसके अंदर. सीक्वेंस नंबर
ठीक है.
चेंज लाना जरूरी इसलिए भी है क्योंकि हॉप काउंट को रिफ्लेक्ट करना है, वरना पता नहीं चलेगा कि हॉप काउंट कैसे आ गया. तो जो कोई भी नोड जिसके पास राउटिंग टेबल की इंफॉर्मेशन जाएगी वो देखेगा कि बी के कॉरेस्पॉन्डिंगली बी से पहले सीक्वेंस नंबर क्या था और अब क्या है. तो पहले था 203
ठीक है.
और हॉप काउंट की वैल्यू 1 थी, अब है 203 और हॉप काउंट की वैल्यू इन्फिनिटी. यही चेंजेस है.
Okay.
सर ये प्रोग्रामेटिकली अगर हम जैसे खुद से करें तो वी
हाँ.
विल डिसाइड द सीक्वेंस नंबर फॉर द नोड्स, करेक्ट?
यस 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 यस.
तो उस केस में तो आइडियली इन केस ऑफ कॉन्फ्लिक्ट वी कैन ऑब्वियसली चेक कि कौन सा रिकॉर्ड हमारे सीक्वेंस टेबल में प्रेजेंट है कि नहीं, तो वो सीक्वेंस नंबर हम उसको इंक्रीमेंट करके नहीं देंगे टू अवॉइड द एम्बिगुइटी.
यही करते हैं, यही करते हैं.
ओके ओके, ठीक है, मेक्स सेंस. थैंक यू.
So I'm stop sharing the slides of the DSDB and moving on to the AOD. So I hope it is visible. It's a slide that starts with the comparison of the DSDB with the AODB protocol. So first of all, let's look at the differences between both of them, the DSDB and the AODB. AODB is ad hoc on-demand distance vector routing protocol. So after sharing, is it visible? Are we able to see? Right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. Well, let's look at the first difference. We said DSDB broadcasts every change in the network to every other node in the network, because that's one of the good thing about the DSDB. Now in AODB, such broadcasts are not necessary because these are the network which established on fly basis, so it will not do the same repetitive thing what DSDB did, because DSDB it's a source path based routing where entire network topology is known in advance. So the node takes the responsibility that whenever it notices any link break, it's responsible to inform all other nodes in the network. But AODB is a greedy protocol, it doesn't worry about all those things, so no such broadcasts are necessary in the case of AODB. However, we are not stopping from AODB for doing it. If we write the code and this AODB can also do broadcast in the same manner what DSDB does, but default AODB doesn't do the broadcasting. Second point, when two neighbors enter communication range of each other, the result is the network-wide broadcast. So we have seen when the A has joined the network connected to the B, the first thing what B did was sends the routing table update to all other neighboring nodes in the network. Now if you look at the AODB, if the link break does not affect ongoing transmission, it will never do the global broadcast. And only the affected nodes are informed in the case of the AODB. So the left and the right or the neighboring nodes will be informed, not the entire network will be taken care of in the case of the AODB. Let's look at the DSDB, the first column. Similarly, when two nodes drift apart from each other range, the link breakage, it also again result in the network-wide broadcast. But in the case of the AODB, only affected nodes, that is left and right nodes, will be informed, not beyond that. So we say local movement of the nodes will have local effect and not the global effect. Whereas in the case of the DSDB, the last point, if you see, local movements can have the global effect. Global effect means sending the routing table updates to all the nodes in the network. But since the AODB does not believe in broadcasting, so we say AODB reduces the network-wide broadcast to the extent possible. So there will not be many number of packets floating onto the network just to inform all other nodes that link has got broken down. So AODB is able to reduce the network traffic to a larger extent as such. when we compare it with the DSDV or destination sequenced distance vector routing protocol. There is a significant reduction in the control overhead when we compare it to the DSDV. That's how typically the AODV functionality is. So some of the prominent features about the AODV, it is reactive or on-demand routing protocol. It is a descendant of the DSDV. It uses the bidirectional link, so left and right, it keeps track of all those things. The route discovery cycle is used for route finding. So we took the example of sending the RREQ and the RREQ packets, the route request and the route reply packet. It will widely used for finding the routes. It also take care of the maintenance of the active routes. And again, we use the concept of sequence number, which we use for the route prevention and route freshness. So whichever is the greater destination sequence number, we will always use it, and provides both one-to-one and one-to-many. So unicast and multicasting information is there in the case of the AODV. Now in AODV, whenever routes are not used or they get expired, they are discarded as such, because we are not sure whether the node will join back immediately or not. So it reduces the chances of the old route, or what we call the stale route, and reduces the need for the route maintenance, because here the mobility can be longer. In the DSDV, the entire network was well known in advance, so I was known what are the nodes participating in the network and for how long it will be there. Now here, anyone can come in at any point of time and anyone can go off at any point of time. So we don't keep a track of the routes for longer duration of the time. Another point, second point, if we see, minimizes the number of active routes between the active source and the active destination. And third point, can determine multiple routes between a single source and a destination, but implements only a single route. So even if my information is available that there are multiple routes for reaching from source to destination, it will implement only the single route, because it is difficult to manage multiple routes between the same source and destination pair. It's absolutely right. Even if I, let's say, if the node, there's a path from the node A to the node M or N, and there are at least 4 to 5 paths for reaching it. So I will only take into account the one path, and preferably we take into account the path which offers the least hop count and which is easily manageable as such. So even if one of the route breaks, it is difficult to know whether other routes are still available or not. So we will keep on determining and finding out the path every now and then when the link breaks down. And a lot of bookkeeping is maintaining a routing table. So a lot of bookkeeping is involved if we keep a track of all the routes within the AODV protocol. Now some of the properties of the AODV. AODV discovers the route as and when necessary. Now this line we never say in the case of DSDV. DSDV never discovers the route. It just propagates the route. It sends the information about the routes from source to destination. But here route discovery is done between the source and destination. It does not maintain routes from every node to every other node, because it only believes in sending the messages, sending the information. And the routes are maintained just as long as they are necessary. So we will not maintain the route for longer duration of time, and the routing table will not grow larger in size, and the routes will not remain for longer duration. So it's very dynamic protocol in that sense. It just maintains the current information, not information for longer duration of time. And every node maintains its monotonically increasing sequence number, because this is something, it is a descendant of the DSDV. So it will use the concept of the increasing sequence number, and increases every time the node notices some change in the neighborhood topology. So again, we know we will not decrement it, the point to remember, and we'll always increment the value, just like what the DSDV does. So whenever it notices any change in the neighborhood topology, accordingly it will reflect that change with the help of increasing the sequence numbers. Some more properties of the AODV before we take an example. AODV utilizes routing tables to store routing information. Routing table, now this is one of the optional feature on the AODV to create and maintain the routing tables. Now this routing table can be used for unicast route or for the multicast route. Now if AODV uses the routing table, what information will store? It will store the information about destination address, next hop address, destination sequence number, and the lifetime, means how long the route or record will exist in seconds. For each destination, a node maintains a list of the precursor nodes, through which all nodes it has come to reach up to that conclusion. And precursor nodes also helps in route maintenance, which we will discuss what is route maintenance and why it is required. and the lifetime updated every time. The route is used from the source to the destination. So if the route is not used within its lifetime, it will immediately expire. It will die down on its own as such. Now, another few more properties. When a node wishes to send a packet to some destination, now how it will do, let's see step by step. It checks its routing table to determine if it has a current route to the destination. So that's the first thing it will do. So if there is a node who wishes to send a packet to a destination, an important one to remember, let's see. It checks its routing table to determine if it has a current route to the destination. If yes, it will forward the packet to the next hop node. However, if the answer is no, it initiates the route discovery process. Now, in 99% of the chances where we create the mobile ad hoc network on real-time applications, the second point will always get activated. That is no, it initiates the route discovery process. Because here we are not familiar with the network topology. We do not know how many number of nodes are there in the network, at what point they will join in, at what point they will move out. We have no idea about these nodes as such. So we'll always do a route discovery process. Now let's look at the second point. Route discovery process begins with the current route request packet. That is, and who will create the current route request packet? The source node. Source node means the node which is actually doing a route discovery process. And source node is a one which has a packet to transmit. Now, source node can have the packet in two situations. Either it has generated the packet on its own, or it is receiving the packet from some other node, and now it need to forward the packet to the next node, and now it will do the route discovery process. So there are two chances when it will do the route request, either for some other node or for its own when it is self-generated the packet. What will the packet will contain? It will contain the source node IP address, the source node current sequence number, the destination IP address, and the destination sequence number. So now we have two things: the sequence number, one for the source node and one for the destination node as such. Now, packet also contains one more ID, what we call the broadcast ID number. Now, this broadcast ID gets incremented each time a source node uses the route request message as such. And the broadcast ID and the source IP address form a unique identifier for the route request packet. So, we'll use one more additional information, what we call the broadcast ID, which is not used in the case of the DSDV protocol. And this broadcast ID is a unique ID number which will get incremented each time a source node generates the route request messages. And here the broadcasting is normally done via the concept of the flooding within the network. Now let's look at an example for the flooding. How does it actually happen? Flooding for the control packet delivery example. Let's take this is a network. Now this network has got two partitions. One is a partition having many number of nodes. Let's say A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, H till the value M. And the other cluster is there having only two nodes Y and Z. Now the blue color indicates that the node has received the packet P. The dashed line represent that the connected nodes are within each other's transmission range. So these are the indication marks we will be using within this presentation. Now flooding means broadcasting. Means you are sending the information to everybody within the network. So here we have got the source node S. This is our S, and then we have got this D, destination. So this is a source and this is a destination as such. Now we need to discover the path using the AODV protocol from this source to this destination. So what does the source node do? It generates a route request packet and it broadcasts. So all the neighborhood nodes of the node S receives the information as such. So that is what we just discussed. Blue color node indicates the node represents a node that receives the packet P for the very first time, and the red color dashed line indicate transmission of the packet P from the source to the neighborhood nodes. Now, in this kind of network, there will be a situation when a single node receives the packet from multiple nodes for the same destination. So we will always believe that broadcasting these kind of things are likely to happen because same information gets propagated via the multiple path. So if you look at this slide here, the node H is this one. It receives a packet P from two neighbors, because if you look at the node, it is receiving the information from B also and C also. So there is a potential for collision because the information is being received from two multiple packets. Now why we are doing all this? Because we want to find out the path from the node S to the node D, that is from the source to the destination. So there is a possibility of collision when a same node receives the information about the destination node from two different sources. Now here if you look at the node C, this is a node C. It receives a packet P from the G and H. This is G and this is H. So we can look at these lines, that red colored dashed lines. It is receiving the information from two sources, G, C. But it does not forward it again because node C has already forwarded the packet P once. So initially the C has already received the information from S. But during the process of broadcasting, it again receives the information from H as well as G. So this time it will not forward it again because node C has already forwarded the packet P once. So if the node has forwarded it once, it will not re-forward the same packet because there will be a huge traffic congestion within the network if they keep on doing something like this. Now slowly and steadily, by using a broadcasting or the flooding phenomena, we reaches to the finally to the destination node. So here we can see node J, this is node J and the node K. Both of them broadcast the packet to the node D. So information reaches to the node D. Now since node J and K again are hidden from each other, their transmission may collide at the destination D. Now packet P may not be delivered to node D at all despite the use of the flooding. So because it is being received from multiple paths, so again if the packet reaches at the same time, then only the chances of collision are there. So if the packet of the J reaches to the D first, followed by K, then there is no collision. But if it happened momentarily at the same point, exactly at the same point of time, then yes, transmission may collide. The word is may collide. It is not absolute collision as is going to take place after that. So chances of collision if it delivers at the same point of time. So now D has been discovered using this concept of the flooding, and it is able to reach to a destination node. Now let's look from the M point of view and the D point of view. The node D does not forward the packet P because node D is an intended destination for the packet P, so it will not do it as such. But look at the M will again try because M doesn't know where the D is, so again it will broadcast the packet it has received as such. And look at the other partition, the Z and the Y, they are not affected by it because that's another cluster within the same network, but it is not connected to any other node in the network as such. Now the flooding gets completed here. Look at the first point. The flooding is successful. The D has been traversed. Now nodes unreachable from the S do not receive the packet P. For example, Z and the Y, they are unreachable because no intermediate nodes helps them to reach up to the packet, to deliver the packet to the D via the Z. So that's a different cluster altogether. And nodes for which the path go through the destination D also do not receive the packet. For example, the node N, because N comes after the D. So and the D will not forward the packet to the N because finally when the packet reaches to D comes to that I am the destination. It will not do any further forwarding. So forwarding and the flooding will stop once the packet reaches to the destination node, the D. Now the flooding may deliver many packets to many nodes, and the worst case, all nodes reachable from the sender may receive the packet because a huge amount of the traffic congestion that will take place in the case of this flooding of the messages. So flooding of the control packet summary, if you look, many protocols perform the flooding of the control packets, for example AODV and DSR, instead of the data packet because they believe because they do not know where the node is. If you compare with the DSDV, we used to maintain a routing table and we know which node is reachable from which node and how many hop count away. But here we are, since we are not doing anything, we just believe in flooding. Just send the information to any information to everyone, and the message will be able to reach to the destination. We have a protocol, something like an epidemic protocol, just like the coronavirus is one of the example. If we can take here, it's more like since we do not know the information, it's more like a rumor mongering also. Rumor mongering also falls into the category of the flooding. If you want the message to deliver fastest possible way from the source to destination, tell it to everyone. So everyone will meet to their own neighbors. They will also tell the same message. So whenever we in the actual implementation, when we do the thesis for the MTech and the PhD, and we do the routing based thesis, when we come up with our own routing scheme, we always compare the performance of our own routing scheme with the epidemic routing scheme, because we always believe the epidemic routing scheme is the fastest routing scheme, because the message transfers at phenomenal rate, because every node does the same thing. Every node helps in transmission of the message from the source to the destination. So if I correctly remember the name, there were a person like Wahadat and Becker from the Duke University in US. They discovered this protocol way back in 2000, epidemic based routing scheme, where they said the best possible way, if you want to transmit this message from the source to destination, do it with the help of the flooding. Tell the information to everyone, and everyone will do the same thing for you. They will again meet their neighbors, deliver the same information. Again, they will meet their neighbors, they will deliver the same information. The only trade-off that exists here is that delivery is fastest, no doubt. The route discovery is fastest, but it introduces a lot of congestion and overhead within the network. So if one can afford the congestion overhead, then there's no problem. Nothing can match the efficiency of the epidemic routing schemes or the flooding-based routing schemes. So look at the second point here. The control packets. The control packet are used to discover the routes. The discovered routes are then subsequently used to send the data packet, because since till now what we are doing, we are just discovering the routes. We have not sent any data packets. We are just finding the path from the source to the destination. And the overhead of the control packet is amortized over the data packet transmitted in the consecutive control packet floods. So it can be taken care of, because once it will take time, no doubt. But once this node comes to know, okay, this is a path from which I can reach from source to destination, it can reuse the path next again if it requires. So one time overhead is there, no doubt, but the same overhead will be optimized or will be useless when we further use the same path multiple number of times. So whatever time it took in the very first, it can be taken care of in the subsequent route discoveries. Let's come an example. Route discovery, non-flooding based. Yeah, the node sends node S needs a route to the D. So I have got a simple network where we have got a source node S, and it need to discover the path to reach to the destination node D. Now, first thing it will do is route discovery, because it need to search the path. It is no table which it can look forward to find out the path from the source to the destination. So node S needs a route to the node D. It creates a route request message or a REQ message where it enters the information. What all information we have seen? The source address, the destination address, the source sequence number, and the hop count value. So we say enter the D's IP address, 32-bit IP address. It will enter the destination sequence number. It will enter the source IP address. It will enter the source sequence number and the hop count value. Now currently the value of hop count is 0. It has no idea where the destination node D is. So it just puts the value 0 and broadcasts the route request message to the neighbors. Now what will the neighbors do? If you look further down the slide, now the node A receives the route request message from the source node S and makes a reverse entry for the S, because now it is receiving the packet from the S, and it knows that when I am receiving a route request, I will also have to deliver the route reply, because node A knows the route discovery getting done. So it also makes a reverse entry for the node S, where we say destination is equal to S, the next hop is S, and the hop count is value is 1. So it has no route to B, so it rebroadcasts the route request message. So it will forward the route request message, but at the same point of time, it will also store the information about the node S within its own caching or buffer area, because it knows when the route request will be successful, it need to deliver the root reply back to the source node S. So reverse entry path is also being done in the case of the AODB protocol, which is not done in the case of the DSDB protocol. So we say node A receives the root request, makes a reverse entry, which we have seen. It has no root release, so it will rebroadcast the root request message. Now here, further moving down the line, node C receives the root request from the node A. So it also makes a reverse entry for the node S. So it stores the information that destination is equal to S. Next hop is A, because via the A it will reach to the source node S, and the hop count value of the S from the node C will be 2, because it has to cross A and S. Now this is one thing what C does. Again, C is aware about the D, so it has the root to the node D, and the sequence number for the root D will be used whether it is greater than or less than. It will have to check the current value as such. What is the destination sequence number in the root request message? So root reply in AODB, some of the concepts which we need to know before we understand it. An intermediate node, not the destination. So any of the intermediate node may also be aware about the destination. May also send a root reply provided it is more recent path than the one previously known to the sender S. So it is not only the destination, but it is the intermediate node also which can send a reply on behalf of the destination to the source node as such, provided it has got more recent latest path. What the node S is knowing is if the intermediate node has a more latest path, it will deliver it back to the source node. Now to determine whether the path known to the intermediate node is latest or not, it will use the destination sequence number. And the likelihood that an intermediate node will send a root reply when using the AODB is not as high as the DSR. DSR is the destination sequence routing or the dynamic source sequence routing, which we will discuss later regarding the MANET protocols. So a new root request by the node S for a destination is assigned with a higher destination sequence number, and the intermediate node which knows the root but with a smaller sequence number cannot send a root reply. So even if the intermediate node has an idea where the destination is, but if the sequence number is smaller, it will remain silent, because we will always prefer the one which is a higher value or the greatest value of the sequence number, because that will be considered as a one having the fresh root. So here, coming back to the slide, the node C receives a root request, and now C creates a root reply because it knows where the D is, right? So it enters the D's IP address, it enters the sequence number corresponding to the node D, it enters the source machine IP address, which it is already receiving with the help of the root request, and the hop count value to D, which is 1 in this case. So in the previous slide, we have seen the root request was getting broadcasted. Now the C is sending the root reply, RREP. Now this reply is being generated on behalf of the D by the machine C, because C is one hop count away from the node D. So on behalf of the node D, it generates the root reply and transmits it back to the via the reverse path back to the S. Now when we do this, we will not do the broadcasting, we will do a unicasting, because we know where the root request was coming. So we have been tracking that reverse path also. So using that reverse path, we will deliver the message to the source S. So C will send the RREP root reply message to the node A, and node A has stored the reverse path for the node S. So it will deliver that to the node S. So that is what we see in this. AODB reverse path, forward path setup. So node A receives the root reply, makes a forward entry to the D. So destination becomes a D, next hop becomes a C, and it is hop count away. And unicast root reply back to the source node. So if you look for the node A, it first of all makes a forward entry that yes, D is not reachable. Now reachable via the node C. So destination node, it's D, next hop count is C, and how many hop count away the D is from the A? It is 2 hop count away. So C and D. That is one thing what A does. Second thing, it sends the root reply back to the source S. So in unicast, the root reply to the source node S. So the source node can receive the final root reply with the message routing. We should not use the word message routing, but the root discovery. Root discovery has been successful, and we have been able to track where the destination node D is present. So that is how the forward path setup is done. It's the same theory which has been written here. I will share the slides here so you can go through them at your own pace. So any doubt regarding the AODB? Now again we must remember that whatever we discussed in the slides, it's a concept wherein we are doing route discovery. It's discovering a path. No actual message has been transmitted till now. It's only being it's only determining the path from the source to the destination as such. DSDB will use a routing table, and AODB will do it on the fly basis. Here we will not use any routing table. And since it does not use any routing table, what it does, every node has a responsibility that it keep on forwarding the information to the forward node also, as well as storing the information for the reverse node also. So every node, LHS and RJ, it takes on the left hand and the right hand side. But from where I am receiving the request, and before forwarding the request, it will maintain the information about that request node also, from whom the request is being received. So when the reply comes back, it becomes easy for that node to reply back to the source node. So we have seen this root request and root reply journey, and that is one thing where every node will keep on storing the reverse path as well as forwarding the node to the forwarding the message to the next node. That is one thing it will take care. Second thing it will take care, every intermediate node has a right to reply on behalf of the destination node to the source node, but it has to make it a point that the node has a greater value of the destination sequence number. If it has a smaller value for the destination sequence number, that will be considered as a stale route. It will not be used. So any node which has the latest or the higher value of the destination sequence number corresponding to the destination node, it can reply back to the source node that yes, I know where that node is, how many hop count is away. So you don't need to reach up to the right last point. Every intermediate node has a right to reply back on behalf of the destination node to the source node. That I know where the destination is. You don't need to go up to that point, and I can reply on behalf of it. So it will immediately do a reverse reply RREP messages and inform the source node that the route discovery is successful, and I know where the destination is. Now you can send me the messages, and I will deliver it to the destination node successfully without any problem. So that's how typically the AODB protocol works. Any doubts regarding it? I will.
Sir, one doubt.
Yeah.
If there is a connection between B and C as well, then while getting that request from A would have been broadcasted that request to B and C, both
Yeah.
of it.
Yeah. Root request will be always be broadcasted. Root reply will be unicasted.
Okay, then in case D has sent the so in this case, like if there is a connection between B and C, then C would have unicasted a response to A only, or it would have requested means it would have been sent the response to B as well.
If the C would receive the root request from two neighboring nodes, from A also and B also, it will reply back only to one of the nodes, not to both of them. In AODB, the reply is always unicasted. So either it
But
reply
how
to
it
A,
will decide? How C will
it's
decide whether to send?
it's all on the first come first served basis. So if it has received the root request of the A first, it will reply to A. If it has received the root request from the B first, it will reply to both B, but not both of them together. That is not how the AODB works.
So if if the response has been sent to B, then when the response reaches to S, it would have maintained the value accordingly. Like
Yes, yes, yes.
currently, it has recorded the value as C and then hop count as 2.
Right,
Correct. Okay.
right.
Okay. Fine.
That's how typically AODB works. It will never take
Right.
more time to duplicate.
Okay.
Any other doubt?
Thank you.
So that's how the AODB typically works. Tomorrow we'll discuss about the DSR protocol, because doing so many protocols on one day will again confuse how the routing actually works. So tomorrow again in the evening we'll meet at the same time and discuss about the working of the DSR protocol in the case of the mobile network. So that is all from my side. So I close down the sharing. Any doubts you can always We can always discuss it practically.
Sir, regarding the internals,
So what Kalia sir has said?